Hi, I'm Lisa from Pink Hollybush Designs. Welcome to my sewing studio where we talk everything sewing and smocking. Today I have a quick tutorial for you on how to hand pleat your fabric for smocking. Now I know you're probably thinking, Lisa, why do I want to hand pleat my fabric? That does not sound like fun. Well, I have 3 reasons for you why you might want to consider hand pleating, and then I'm going to show you how to do it. It actually goes pretty quickly, so don't get discouraged. Okay, reason number 1 to hand pleat your fabric. You don't own a pleater. You want to give smocking a try, and the particular design you want to use does not allow you to use a pre-pleated insert. So let me unpack that a little bit. First of all, you don't own a pleater. You're not sure you want to invest in that, but you want to give smocking a try. Second thing, you don't want to use a pre-pleated insert. We do have pre-pleated inserts, and that is a great way to give smocking a try. I will put a link below to those inserts if you want to just purchase a pre-pleated insert. But a pre-pleated insert can only be used, it's a specific look, and it can only be used in specific patterns. So if you had your heart set on doing a more of a traditional design that uses has a pleated skirt, for example, you couldn't do that with a pleated insert. So this was exactly how I got started smocking. I was in my local library and I saw Kitty Benton's book, which is Sewing Classic Clothes for Children. I checked it out from the library and I wanted to make the cover dress for my daughter, and I did. And I had a hand pleat because that was my only option. So if that is you, you might want to try this hand pleating. Okay, second reason, your fabric choice. So you're trying to pleat a fabric that maybe is a little bit trickier. So it might be a fabric that's too thick, such as a wool coating, because you want to do a coat for your child. And you know, trying to put that through the pleater, you're probably going to break needles or have a difficult time getting it through just because of the thickness. Maybe you're trying to use a fabric that's really thin and has a lot of drape to it because you're trying to smock an adult garment and you want to use a rayon or a georgette or a silk that might easily mark. So again, hand pleating is going to give you the control and you don't have to worry about the drape. You can easily pleat it. Maybe you want to pleat a stripe or a check, and that stripe or check has a different width to it than the spacing on your pleater. For example, if you're trying to pleat a 1/4 inch check and your pleater is 3/8 or 1 centimeter, that is going to give you a moire effect when you put it through the pleater. When we go to the cutting table, I'll show you what I mean by that. You might not mind the moire effect, but you might. And the way to avoid that is to hand pleat it. Okay, your third reason is maybe you just want to pleat a small area, or you're trying to pleat a curve, something that's just a little bit more difficult to do. I mean, you can pleat a curve on and put it through the pleater, but it is more difficult. Or maybe you're just trying to add a little touch of smocking right here in the center front, and you're like, you know, rather than trying to pleat the whole width of fabric, it would just be easier to just take a few minutes and do a few running stitches and you have the area pleated. So those are your reasons. So let's go over to my cutting table and I'm going to show you how you can really easily hand pleat a strip of fabric. Now the first thing we need to get started hand pleating is to somehow have our fabric marked so we know where to run our rows of gathering stitches. So the easiest way to do that is to use a fabric that essentially has the grid or the markings already as part of the fabric. And a check fabric is the perfect thing to use for that. So you might be able to see here my threads. I'm going to explain to you how I did this, and then it's gathered here in the middle. Now this is a 1/4 inch check, and I mentioned before that moire effect. Because I've run even running stitches, same width of stitch on both sides, just running along those rows and squares. When I pull it up, you'll see here how you get the stripe and all the light colors at the top. All the light blue is at the top. And on the other side, here you get the dark coming to the other side, to the back essentially. So if you could do it so you had either, whichever you preferred. But when I refer to that moire effect, this is 1/4 inch check. Now if I put this through the pleater, my pleater is 1/3. And so the pleats are not going to line up, and you're not going to get the color consistent like this. Instead, you'll have it being light at some points, dark at other points, and it creates what sort of looks like a moire effect when you pull it up. Now, some people don't mind that, but a lot of people do. They want it to give more of this solid. So that would be a reason why you would want to hand pleat this fabric, even if you did own a pleater. Okay, other options for hand pleating would be to use an even stripe. So this stripe, the stripes are every 1/8 of an inch. So you could easily hand pleat this by making your pleats, again, every 1/4 inch. You would skip a stripe. So for example, I could pick up all of the pink stripes, but I'd pick up every other pink stripe. In order to get the lines that I'm going to do my pleating threads across, I just use a fabric marking pen, use my ruler, and draw the lines on there. Now, a third option besides a stripe is using something, a print, that has an even pattern to it that again is going to let you pick up your stripes. So for example, or pick up your and create your pleats. So for example, this particular fabric, if you look at it, okay, my little squares are coming out. Let's see if I put it here so you can see it better. Okay, so my little squares are just under 1/4 of an inch from one to the next. And again, with your pleats, if you're using a pleater, the rows are 3/8 to 1 centimeter, depending on what type of pleater you have, and that's the spacing that you want. You can go up as much as 1/4 of an inch. But so this would be a perfect distance apart. Now another option is to use knots dots, and these are iron-on dots. This was how our grandparents did this in the 40s and the 50s. These would come in your paper pattern. You'd cut it to the size and just iron it on the fabric. All right, your last option, if you want a solid or if you have an all-over floral or some sort of fabric that does not have a grid built in, is to add the grid yourself. So what I've done here is I've gone through and I've just used my marking pen and I've drawn my lines, and I've made mine a 1/4 inch apart, so both horizontally and vertically. You want to space them 3/8 to 1/4 of an inch or 1 centimeter apart. I've used the 1/4 inch just because those are the quilting rulers that I have, and it was easily marked with that. Then you're going to use, I'm using my number 7 darner. You also could use an embroidery needle, a sharps, whatever's easiest for you, a number 8 embroidery if you were using an embroidery needle. And I'm using hand quilting thread. It's a little bit sturdier than all-purpose thread because I'm going to have several rows, and then I'm going to want to pull on this thread to pull up all of those pleats. I've knotted one end. You want to make sure your thread is as long as your strip. Normally you're going to start at the one side, work all the way across for each of the rows. So I'm just starting in the middle here so you can see what I'm doing. So I've put a knot at the end, and I'm doing an uneven running stitch for this. You can do even or uneven, both are correct. Okay, for my gingham piece, this was even, which means that when I'm doing the running stitch, each stitch is the same side. There's as much thread on the front side as there is on the back side. For this, I'm doing uneven just because I think that's easier when you have a grid like this. So at each vertical line, I'm just, with my needle, taking a little bite of fabric, and then I'm going to go over and again take just a little bite of fabric. And what that's going to do is I have more thread on this side than I do on this side. And the side with the more thread is actually going to be my back. And when I pull this up, right, you can see I'll have to have more rows, but it will start to form my pleats just like I did with this piece. And that's all there is to it, is you just sit there and go across the entire piece, and you just do your series of running stitches. Now how many rows you need is dependent on your design. Remember, you do want to have 2 holding rows, one at the top and one at the bottom. So for example, if your design had 4 rows of smocking, you'd want to do 6 running rows of gathering to hand pleat, right? That's always the general rule. If you'd like to know more about smocking, I have a whole video on Get Started Smocking. I will put a link to that. Go over there and check it out. It will explain all the basics about pleating, and what you need to know to get started smocking. I hope you'll give smocking a try and not let the fact that you don't own a pleater stand in your way.